Jong-soo suggested a simple contest. The first to grab the opponent's wrist would win. Goto, who was watching the match, suggested holding practice matches between S-rank hunters from both countries to build trust. President Jo Jun-hee agreed, on the condition that magician and non-combatant hunters would be excluded due to the difficulty of judging such matches. Additional rules were proposed, including multiple hunters participating at once and expanding the winning conditions to include touching the opponent's wrist, back, or taking them down. With these rules in place, the teams were formed. South Korea would send Baek Ma-don, Wook Chyeon, and Lim Tae-ji, while Japan would send Tanaka and Tutakanai. The stage was set for a series of intense matches that would showcase the skills and strength of the best hunters from both countries. As Jin-Woo watched the scene unfold before him, he noticed that Goto Ryuji was not participating. He wondered why, thinking that Goto might just be measuring their strength. However, watching a match between S-rank hunters was a rare opportunity, and Jin-Woo was happy to be present. Tanaka Kenzo was in match with Ma-dong. Kenzo had evaluated Ma-dong and Baek from their previous fight, but he felt that Baek was hiding something. On the other hand, a 4-on-4 match seemed to mean that the opponent Toadakani would be Chahayan. He looked optimistic that their opponents would be lenient with them while Dong-wook announced the start of the match. Dong-wook's ability to grow further showed his preference for strong fights, a straightforward strategy that Kenzo found commendable. As the match began, the room filled with tension. Taegu noticed his opponent's speed and concluded that close combat would put him at a disadvantage. His specialty was creating distance and attacking from afar, a strategy he immediately adopted. By firing a magic arrow, Junhaya, who was observing the fortification of the facility, commented that it was made of high-quality gemstones. Ordinary hunters would have difficulty damaging the walls, but the place was destroyed in seconds. He expressed regret for sending the young hunters into battle against some of the strongest, a world-class S-rank hunter, determined to be prepared for anything, even if it meant breaking his opponent's wrist if necessary. Kumamoto noticed that Pike seemed to be wasting his energy. He pounced on Pike without adhering to any specific rules, instead operating on the principle of survival to repair. Pike noticed that Kumamoto intended to fight, but wondered why he was hesitating, wondering if Kumamoto might be afraid. While Kumamoto doubted his suitability as a hunter, Pike pondered Kumamoto's behavior, unable to determine if the man had good judgment or was simply a coward who wanted to test their strength. Perhaps in preparation for fighting ants, this realization stirred something within him, prompting Pike to decide that it was time to show a glimpse of his true strength. His demeanor changed noticeably, and a fierce determination settled within him. The intensity of his gaze was so strong that it struck fear into his opponent, Kumamoto, who suddenly felt himself engulfed in a deep sense of dread. Kumamoto's confidence was shaken, and he was overcome with the desire to flee the confrontation. Completely without hesitation, Baek charged forward with tremendous speed, his sharp claws targeting Kumamoto immediately. As the match progressed, Jun-soo and his partner began to admire the immense levels of strength present, realizing that their previous matches were merely child's play in comparison. The training sessions yielded decisive results. Tanaka defeated Kenzo Maiden-wook, who laughed at his unexpected defeat, while Hoshino Minoru defeated Lim Taegu. Baek prepared for his turn, feeling underestimated compared to Hyen. Tawada, who was training with Hyen, found it difficult to keep up with her unpredictable movements. Hyen's nickname, Dancer, reflected her quick and deadly prowess, a name she found embarrassing and therefore discouraged its use. Hyen deftly dodged Tawada's attacks, taking her out of the training match, then quickly moved to help Baek, who was facing two opponents. When she tried to intervene, Kumamoto attempted a surprise attack, but Hyen responded with amazing speed, delivering a series of punches that impressed the observers. They couldn't believe how many times she had hit him in the blink of an eye. I realized that her instinctive reaction was exaggerated. The observers noticed that Kumamoto lost control when he got angry and became irrational and dangerous despite being able to pass a B-rank gate on his own. Asterisk the test. Asterisk he ordered his team to leave asterisk Kumamoto for a while, ready to intervene if necessary. When Kumamoto prepared to attack Hyen again, Gino intervened, warning that they were overdoing what was supposed to be a training session. An enraged Kumamoto tried to grab Gino only to find himself dragged to the ground. Goto, who was confused by Gino's movements, wondered if Gino was truly a witch hunter, which Hanika confirmed based on official data. Gino suggested that the match be considered a loss for the South Korean hunters, and Hyen agreed, acknowledging the overwhelming strength of the Japanese hunters. Bite admitted that even transformation would not have made a difference and accepted asterisk defeat with dignity. Goto approached Gino with a direct request for a one-on-one fight. His expression was intense, his eyes fixed on Gino, and he spoke through an interpreter. Gino listened as the interpreter relayed Goto's request. It was clear that Goto wanted to see what Gino could do. Gino looked at Goto, trying to understand his true intentions. Goto was famous and wasn't interested in just showing off his skills. If he wanted to show off his abilities, he would have challenged one of the leaders of the major Korean teams. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in Joe. Gino wasn't opposed to the idea of fighting. He was excited to test the skills he had honed in the demon world. He was curious about the abilities of the best hunter in Japan. Jino could see that Goto was also curious about his abilities. However, Goto was surprised when he saw Jino's relaxed demeanor. Jino spoke to the interpreter, who seemed hesitant, but eventually relayed Jino's response to Goto. The interpreter told Goto that Jino had accepted the challenge. But he had set a condition. This puzzled Goto, who wanted to know what that condition was. The interpreter explained that Jino would only accept the fight if Goto was willing to do his best. Goto took this condition by surprise. He expected Jino to hesitate, but instead, Jino was the one setting the conditions. Goto observed the situation with a sense of amusement and found the condensed events entertaining. He knew that they had a valuable element in Shimizu, the healer from rank S, and with Shimizu's power, any injuries they might sustain in the coming moments wouldn't pose a serious threat. Goto ordered Shimizu to be prepared, ensuring that anyone injured would receive immediate assistance, including Jin-Woo, who would need her help in a few minutes. The observers, which included rank S hunters and association employees, gathered around Jin-Woo and Master Goto. They were a mixture of excitement and worry. Among them was Heian, who was extremely worried for his safety. However, she remembered how Jin-Woo had fought a rank A dungeon boss and over 100 high-level orcs. This memory made her heart flutter and her expectations rise, preventing her from intervening. Beck, who had raided with Heian in the past and was aware of her condition, stood by her side, acknowledging her difficulty when she mentioned that she couldn't avoid other hunters forever, especially on Jeju Island. When Heian asked about his relationship with Jin, he wondered why he hadn't tried to convince Jin-Woo not to accept such a dangerous fight under normal circumstances. Perhaps Beck had done it, but this was no ordinary case. Jino's opponent was none other than Goto Ryuji, a very powerful S-rank hunter. Heian couldn't understand why Beck wasn't more worried, so she pressed him for an answer, and Beck surprised her by revealing that he shared the same reason for not intervening. This statement surprised Heian, who was usually calm and focused. She was surprised at how well Beck understood her feelings. Despite her anxiety, she couldn't ignore the excitement that overcame her at the thought that Jino might be able to achieve the impossible. Beck smiled, and his eyes sparkled with anticipation as he turned his attention back to Jino and Master Goto. Heian shared her excitement and believed that Jino might be an awakened being with growing abilities. Finally, the moment of truth had arrived. But before Jino could fully prepare himself, Goto fired a strike towards where Jino's head was. He was surprised to find that he missed his attempt to hit Jino with a single punch that failed as Jino dodged the blow and moved away from him. Jino's reaction speed was remarkable for someone who was considered a mage hunter. Goto couldn't believe his eyes. It seemed impossible that Jino could move so quickly and silently. He must be an assassination hunter. Goto was determined to uncover Jino's true abilities and was up for the challenge. Meanwhile, Jino stood far enough away from Goto to listen to his heartbeat. His heart was pounding, but instead of fear, he felt a surge of confidence. Goto's strength was on a different level than other S-rank hunters. However, Jino felt reassured, knowing how much he had improved after reaching level 79. His confidence was evident on his face. Goto's expression hardened when he saw Jino smile. This disturbed Goto, so he unleashed a massive amount of magic energy, causing the observers to tremble. They began to worry about the seriousness of the match. The spectators were taken aback by Goto's fierce attack and Jino's evasive moves. They were surprised that Jino was holding on. But Heian knew better than that. Jino wasn't just holding on, rather, he was provoking Goto to attack. When Youngin returned from his break, he noticed that an intense match had begun in his absence. The atmosphere was tense, and it was clear that the training match between Jino and Goto Ryuji had taken a serious turn. Goto realized that Jino was no ordinary opponent and felt the need to unleash his full power. He decided that holding him back was no longer an option. Goto decided to kill Jino. At that moment, Jino received a notification from the system warning him of the imminent danger. The system alerted him to the murderous intentions coming from someone nearby, which heightened his awareness. Goto, who was enraged, launched a powerful and precise attack targeting Jino. His sharp nails almost touched Jino's cheek, passing next to his eye. Jino instinctively grabbed Goto's hand, which stopped the attack. While Jino held Goto's hand, he realized the seriousness of the situation. He knew that if he continued to treat this as just a training match, it might develop into something much more dangerous. Memories of previous confrontations flooded back, with Hwang Dong-suk and Taishik in his mind, reminding him of the urgent tasks of the regime that pushed him to the brink of the abyss. The close hit from Goto made him realize how close he was to losing his eye. On the other hand, Goto was shocked by Jino's strength. He couldn't understand how Jino was that strong, and the fact that Jino had intentionally grabbed his hand instead of his wrist only added to his confusion. Jino, with a sarcastic smile, acknowledged Goto's confusion and hinted that the fight could have ended differently if he had chosen to grab my wrist instead. The two men stared at each other, and the tension between them increased as they prepared to turn their practice match into a real fight. However, before things could escalate further, Beck and Hain intervened. Beck grabbed Gino's shoulder while Hain grabbed his wrist with all her strength, restraining him on the other side. Hoshino pulled Minoru and Wuta backwards while Kei cast an ice spell to create a wall of ice between them, preventing the situation from getting out of hand. Gino looked over his shoulder to see Beck reminding him that Goto would be in charge of leading the Japanese team in a few days. Heian pointed out the dire consequences if anything happened to him. Their intervention helped Jinho regain his composure and Beck suggested ending the training session. Realizing that things had gone too far, Hankawa agreed and the match was ended. After the tension eased, Beck asked Jinho if he had gone too far by interfering, but Jinho reassured him that he had not. As the spectators approached, their outlook on Jinho changed. Dan Wook, the head of the fan guild, was the first to reach him, praising Jinho for training with Goto and coming out with only a scratch, admiring Jinho's muscles. Dan Wook invited him to join the fam guild to correct Young and that Jinho was actually a mage. Wook was surprised by this revelation, as Jinho pondered the confrontation. He realized that he had gained a valuable understanding of the strength of everyone around him in the White Tiger Guild. Beck took a deep breath, his heart still pounding even after Jinho and Goto left the hall. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Seeing someone who could actually increase their abilities by waking up again was amazing to him. The concept had been just a theory until that moment. He began to ponder Gino's potential net worth. Realizing that it was beyond his ability to estimate, Gino's recruitment seemed impossible, but Beck knew that there were other ways to maintain a working relationship without having to be formally recruited. At that moment, his cell phone vibrated, indicating the arrival of a text message. In a distracted mood, he pulled his phone out of his pocket. It was a notification from the association announcing the final list of hunters participating in the ant-eradication mission in 4 days. Beck quickly scrolled through the list to check the names of the Korean hunters. His eyes widened in shock. He jumped out of his seat. There was no Sun Gino on the list elsewhere. Goto pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. The guild's vice president, Shigeo Matsumoto, answered. Goto tried to calm his voice as he told him about an amazing hunter in Korea, perhaps even better than himself. Matsumoto was skeptical, but he asked for a name. The hunter Goto mentioned the name of Jinho, a recently awakened S-class hunter. However, Matsumoto found it strange as there was no such name on the final list of Korean hunters. Goto was confused and inquired about this discrepancy. Matsumoto read the list of Korean team members, Yoon Dong, Baekhae Taiju, and Byungyu. Trying to reassure Goto that everything would be okay, this left Goto in a state of confusion. Wondering what had just happened in Halsan-Bangnok Dam, the crater lake located on the summit of Mount Halla, the catastrophic situation had reached critical colonies. The once thriving ant kingdom was facing famine as its children resorted to cannibalizing each other due to severe food shortages. The Ant Queen realized that the island could no longer support their population and understood the need for a radical change. The Queen realized that they needed a stronger soldier, a strong leader to lead the citizens of their kingdom. This soldier must instill fear in the hearts of their enemies to ensure the survival of the colony. The Queen's resolve hardened. As she made up her mind that we must become stronger, the future of our kingdom depended on it. She urged her children to consume everything available and grow stronger, knowing that this was their only chance for survival. In response to her call, a new powerful entity emerged from the depths of the colony with a resounding cry, announcing the emergence of a mighty force. This new leader would be their hope, their shield, and their sword in the battle for survival. Meanwhile, the media chased after Jin-Woo, who had brought his mother Kyung-hee home. What was this? When they arrived home after she was discharged from the hospital, they opened the door to the apartment to find the huge mess that Jin-Woo had made in the living room. While Jin-Woo was inside the Devil's Castle, Jin-Woo pinched Jin-Woo's cheek while Kyung-hee laughed and scolded him for thinking that the first thing she would do after 4 years was to clean the apartment. Ainu tried to stop her, but she insisted. So the children joined her as well. Their faces brightened as the apartment began to shine with cleanliness. It seemed empty without their mother, but now the place felt warm and cozy. Jin-Woo slept soundly without any worries for the first time in a long time. When he woke up the next morning, his mother had already gotten up. She asked him if he had any news about his father while she was away. Jin-Woo shook his head, weighed down by the thought. He wondered what her reaction would be if she knew he had followed in his father's footsteps and become a hunter. His father was the reason she refused to leave their old apartment. Even though Jin-Woo had made more money than most people would ever see in a lifetime, they still lived there, paying rent every month. His father had disappeared years ago, but she still held on to the hope that he would return one day. His thoughts stopped as he watched his mother. Jin-Woo understood the depth of her hope and the pain that accompanied. The Jeju Island raid was important, but it wasn't as important as his family at the moment. Being with his mother and sister was his top priority, but the public's reaction was less understanding. People wondered why Jin-Woo's name wasn't on the Korean mission list. They doubted his abilities, mocking him, considering him a coward despite having a new S rank. This criticism bothered him. But he was more worried about his sister, Jin-Woo. While browsing social media, Jinho's phone rang. The caller's screen showed that it was Jinho. Jinho told him that he had found a new office to be the headquarters of his guild. Upon arriving at the office, he understood why Jinho looked so confident. Jinho explained that having an office was essential to establishing a guild, but Jinho noticed that the office was too big for just the two of them. Jinho reminded him that they needed 3 people to establish a guild. Jinho thought of the hunters. He knew, realizing that he could choose someone he could trust. At that moment, Jinho mentioned that a foreigner was looking for Jinho. He handed him a piece of paper with a phone number and a hotel room number. This piqued Jinho's interest. But he felt that something was wrong. Using his ability to exchange shadows, he disappeared from the place. In an alleyway, a college student was screaming for help while a knife was pointed at her throat. The killer was enjoying her fear. Suddenly, Jinho appeared and confronted the killer. After a short confrontation, Jinho subdued the killer and ordered him to surrender before midnight. On his way home, Jinho remembered that the mission of the Korean-Japanese alliance it will be the next day. He hoped that the S-rank hunters he knew would return as the planes carrying the hunter's head. Towards Jeju Island, Goto found himself unable to shake the lingering impact of his encounter with Jinho. The tension weighed heavily on him, making him feel suffocated, and thoughts of death crept in. He filled himself with a bitter sense of anxiety. Desperate, he shook his head to push away those dark thoughts, trying to refocus on the mission ahead. He reminded himself that it didn't matter, but the encounter with Jinho had left an impact that was difficult to ignore. Meanwhile, off the coast of China and Taiwan, warships were sailing the ocean, ready to operate near Jeju Island. The formidable fleet was deployed. Jong-soo, the leader of the Knights Guild, reminded his team to prepare. He knew that the ants might have detected their presence and could attack at any moment. One of his lieutenants expressed concern about whether their strategy would work against the ants. Jong-soo admitted that they wouldn't know until they tried, but their mission was to stand on ready to kill any ant that flies in their direction to prevent them from reaching the mainland. Yoon-tae, Yoon-soo's assistant, expressed his unwavering loyalty, ready to follow Yoon-soo to the farthest reaches of the earth, and the Fame Guild. The atmosphere was tense. Their mission was to stand ready for any attacks from the ants despite the heavy responsibility. The Vice Guild leader noted that there wasn't much to do at the moment. They were the defense team, but in reality, they were just a reserve. Dong-wook suggested doing some tactical training with the guild members. However, the Vice Guild leader felt that her title was largely symbolic and downplayed her role. Dong-wook expressed his appreciation for his vice president's contributions to the guild and thanked her for her excellent management and expanding their activities. Despite his gratitude, the vice president was concerned about sending Dong-wook into battle and urged him to return safely to the fine guild. Haegu was angry that Min-sung, a valuable member, was posted to a dangerous location. He demanded that Min-sung be moved to the back, far away, as far as possible, knowing that the forces had already been deployed and could not be called upon. Min-sung ordered them to fight cautiously and remain hidden at the request of the Hunter Association. Hunters from every guild were deployed to the south of the island. The Hunter Guilds, the White Tiger Guild, and the Fam Guild were all stationed there as a precaution. Even if the raid succeeded, there was a risk that the remaining mutant ants would invade the mainland to bolster their numbers. Retired hunters and individuals who had awakened their powers but chose to become hunters joined the battle. There were 5,000 of these individuals, meaning that 0.1% of the awakened in South Korea had joined the battle.